thank you for attending this wonderful, wonderful program of the Asia Society. It's obvious that I'm underdressed, for which I apologize. But as the chair, I suppose I can take a little bit of latitude, but I thought that no one would be with their ties on. I didn't know the Consul General, so many of you dignitaries are here. Welcome, Hanscom and my friend from Egypt. Many of you know that I have a lot of relationship with Israel. Everyone knows that. And my first trip there was 1975, and there was nothing there. But many of you don't know about my relationship with UAE. I just told Mariam before that, in fact, in the early 2000s, I got a phone call out of the blue, and I was invited to become one of 7 or 8 advisors to the now Vice President of the UAE, the Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai. And I ended up serving in a small committee to advise him on economic development. With him being a very, very wise man, there's really no need for him to receive any advice from any of us. But nonetheless, I suspect that he just wants to have a sounding board of sorts. And so that brought me to Dubai many a times, and I have been back a lot of times since. So my relationship to that part of the world, you may say, go deep. I never believe that Israel and its Arab neighbors should be enemies. I never considered that. For many, many years, I always believed that sooner or later, the two will come together. It's not just because they have common heritage, Abrahamic background, but I believe that for many other reasons, the two must get together. So I'm very, very pleased in the last year or two when I saw what is happening in the news. You may not agree with Donald Trump on everything. I certainly don't. But some of the things he did, I think, was excellent. And one of them is the purpose of our program here today. I'm so delighted that both countries have a lady as the Consul General in Hong Kong. Isn't it wonderful? So before I turn over to my good friend Robert Dorfman, let me just tell you a little story about my wife and I getting off the plane in Japan one day. My wife was just walking in, Barbara, and she was born there. And we got off the plane, and as we were in the taxi driving to town, I said to her, I said, you know, every country has good people and every country has bad people. And all the bad people I know in any country are all men. I don't know of one woman in any country that I travel so much that is not a good woman. And I said, if the world were to be run by women, perhaps the world would be a much better place. So we're delighted to have the two Consul Generals, Ahuva, my old friend, and Mariam, my new friend. And we're delighted that, Robert, you're to be the moderator today. Robert is a long, long time friend of mine. In fact, the last time I went to the synagogue, he was my host. And the last time when I was in the mosque in Hong Kong, my host, the imam, is sitting here, as well as also sitting here is the rabbi, also from Israel. And the three of us have done good programs at the Asia Society, and I have just proposed to them that they should come to my home for dinner, and for the rest of you, some other time. But for the time being, I turn over to Robert. Robert, it's yours. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for that very warm introduction. And listen, you're a very tough act to follow, but we'll do our best. Ronnie talked about when he came to visit the synagogue. Actually, he had a friend who was visiting Hong Kong, and he accompanied the friend. As it happens, that was Erev Yom Kippur, which is one of our most holy days, and the service is particularly long. So I give Ronnie full credit. It was sort of 3.5 hours in the synagogue, and he was there from beginning to end. So thank you very much. And Ronnie, thank you for being such a great friend to the Jewish community. It's very much appreciated. The Abraham Accords are called that quite simply because Abraham, or Ibrahim, is the patriarch of both Judaism and Islam. It is a wonderful move, as Ronnie described, towards peace between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Long overdue, but very happy that it's happened. In the course of the 5 months since it's happened, it's had a tremendous impact, and we will be touching on some of that as we speak today. The accords were signed actually in August of 2020, and it marks the first public normalization of relations between an Arab country and Israel since that of Egypt in 1979 and Jordan in 1994. Following the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco have also normalized relations with Israel. Tom Friedman, who wrote a very interesting article worth looking at in the March 2nd issue of the New York Times, referred to it as one of the most significant realignments in modern Middle East history. He says, the UAE-Israel axis brings together the most successful Arab state with the most successful non-Arab state. It simply radiates a lot of energy. So we're going to start with our two guests today, our two speakers, and I'm going to pose the first question to Mariam, representing the UAE, and the question is, why now? What are the major events and global trends that have led to the signing of this historic agreement?
Thank you. Is it open?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Robert, and good evening. It's good to be with all of you here tonight, and thank you for taking the time and the interest to join us in this discussion. I would like to start by thanking Jewish Women Association for coming up with this idea, and of course Asia Society for hosting us in this beautiful, beautiful place. It's been a long time since we're doing physical meetings. Since the last year, thanks to COVID, been doing all Zooms and webinar. So it's really fantastic to be here in person. Going back to the Abraham Accords, I think it's fitting for me to start by echoing my Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, when he said, quote, "The accord is in line with the UAE vision for a stable, future-oriented, and moderate region that prioritize youth, coexistence, peace, and prosperity," end of quote. And as you mentioned, Robert, it's named the Abraham Accords after the three monotheistic faith, which signifies our shared commitment for peace and prosperity. In fact, the UAE has long been a champion for tolerance, for openness, and for inclusion under the leadership of our founding father, the late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan. And this culture of diversity, what made the UAE home for more than 200 nationalities. In 2019, we celebrated the Year of Tolerance, and we also welcomed His Holiness Pope Francis for the first visit ever in the region, after which the vision for interfaith center emerged, the Abrahamic Family House, that will include a church, a mosque, and a synagogue in the same site in Abu Dhabi. Also with the Pope visit, the document of human fraternity was signed along His Eminence Dr. Ahmed al-Tayyib, a Grand Imam of Al-Azhar al-Sharif and chairperson of the Muslim Council of Elders, calling for interfaith harmony between everyone. So in recognition of this, United Nations designated 4th of February 2021 as the inaugural day for International Day for Human Fraternity. So all of this is make the Abraham Accord as a logical product, if I may, for our progressive outlook and our national identity. Of course, also taken into consideration the geopolitical situation in the Middle East, the accord preserved the prospect for peace by securing the suspension of annexation and also by laying the ground for concrete constructive dialogue toward two-state solution. If we think of the accords a decade ago, it might have seemed totally impossible. But as we like to say in the UAE, impossible is possible. And it's the same can-do spirit that underlies the UAE Hope Probe, incredible journey as we watched last month from the desert dune to the orbit of Mars. So thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. So let me pose that question now to Ahuva. From your perspective, from the Israel perspective, why now? Why do you think the timing of this was so appropriate that this happened now?
Thank you, Rob, and good evening. First, just let me join to my colleague here from the United Arab Emirates, thanking the organizers and the hardworking participants and all the sons and daughters of Abraham that present with us today. We have at least 3 or 4 different religions represented here: Muslims, Christian, Jews, and others. Why now? Well, that's a great question. In a way, as Ronnie mentioned and then as Mariam mentioned, it was, for many years, we felt that there's this unfulfilled potential in the relation between Israel and Arab countries. It's even clearer now how unfulfilled it was than in the past. I think it's the accumulation of various events that led to the understanding that this is the right time. If it's the common vision of our leaders, more and more aware of mutual challenges and regional threats, if it's the readiness of the business sector, the public opinion, the constructive role of the American administration, it's like, all the stars were aligned in the right order. So all the pieces just fell into place. And I dare to admit, actually, that COVID-19 had also a very constructive role, because I think more and more people were aware that we cannot handle this disaster alone, and we need to cooperate. We are much more dependent on one another. And the mere fact that Israel is #1 leader of the world in vaccination program and United Arab Emirates is the second, it just proves how much we have in common. So I think the right place, the right time, the right people, everything worked well.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about how much has already happened since the accords were signed, and give us a few examples. Maybe let's start with Ahuva, and then we'll go to Mariam on that.
Okay, so it's amazing how much happened in so little time. It's just amazing. It's overwhelming. And every time I call my ministry and I say, oh, listen, I want to have an agreement with Hong Kong about this and this and this, I said, oh no, we're busy. We're busy with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, and with Morocco. This is our first priority now. Legal departments are extremely busy. So far, we signed about 9 agreements on so much fields as aviation, science and technology, finance, cooperation in space. And the most remarkable, in my view, is a very, very unique consular agreement for the Middle East. It's not that unique in other places, but in the Middle East, even with countries that we had previously peace, we never had a visa waiver agreement. So, so this is allows free travel between the countries that allowed so far 130,000 Israelis to travel to United Arab Emirates, and we're talking about COVID era, right? Imagine if it wasn't been COVID. Now this is more G2G, right? But alongside, we're talking about business, Mekorot, the national water company, has signed a big deal also in the Emirates and in Bahrain. Bahrain, another water engineering construction company, huge success. Education, amazingly, I heard that a Hebrew language school was opened both in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And, you know, hundreds of Emiratis now learn Hebrew and want to study in Israel and cooperate in between universities. The University of Mohammed bin Zayed has signed a great agreement with the Weizmann Institute that Ronnie has, in the past, when we actually had guests here from Israel, hosted as president, about artificial intelligence. Research is going on. It's just tremendous, the speed of the development of between the countries.
Great. Thank you. And so, Mariam, from your perspective, what has happened as you see it?
We heard so many call the Abraham Accord a historic milestone, and they do represent a vision to usher in a new era of peace and prosperity for the entire region. Following signing the accords, the United Arab Emirates, United States, and the State of Israel established the Abraham Fund, of which $3 billion will be mobilized to increase economic cooperation in the Middle East. Some of the some of the strategic initiative will focus on driving growth, creating jobs, and improve standard of living in general for the entire region. Some of these projects might also touch on strengthening infrastructure, improving agricultural productivity, facilitating reliable access to water and energy. So it's really touch all aspects of life for the entire region of the Middle East. So it's really very, very exciting for all this to unfold. If we go to the bilateral relation between the UAE and Israel, as Ahuva already mentioned, so much have happened for the purpose of not going forever. I'm just going to mention a few. There's the reciprocal visa exemption, which will enter force sometime this summer. The delays due to COVID. There's banking and finance agreement. The private sector also very exciting because so much cooperation, not just at the government level, but also from the private sector side. We have an example. We have the Abu Dhabi Investment Office opened their first overseas branch in Tel Aviv. And recently also they signed an agreement with Invest in Israel, which is, I believe, part of the Ministry of Economic. From logistic and transportation, we have DP World signing with Al-Aluf Logistic based in Israel. We have two prominent companies from both sides. From our side is the Al-Habtour Group, and from your side, I think it's called Mobilize. It's Innovation and Technology Corporation. So they will have this autonomous vehicles, which is driverless cars. So there's lots of cooperation happening between sides. And despite COVID and the hindersome that brings along the way, bilateral delegations are ongoing. We've been receiving many delegations from Israel, for example, the delegation to the GITES Technology Week in Dubai. And of course, we look forward welcoming more Israeli for the Expo 2020, which is now 2021 of October. On the last note, maybe it's important to mention that both Israel and UAE have a sharp focus on high-tech sector and a knowledge-based economy. Therefore, the cooperation between the top talent of both sides will no doubt to bring some transformative and innovative ideas. So this is just a little of what's happening. It's just in the speed of light.
Yes.
as we speak, things are being signed and processed. Thank you.
So these are, government to government or business to business deals that are being done. But let's talk for a moment about, people to people, the man in the street, so to speak. How are people in Israel feeling about this? The average person in the street who is not doing the big deal, is not, involved in government, simply people at sort of street level, how do they feel about what's going on?
They're just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 130,000 Israelis who have already traveled to Dubai,
Okay,
right?
and the others are queuing.
Yeah.
Just,
Yes, right.
we closed the borders, so
Yes.
they can't travel anywhere, actually. But people from all levels, it's not only business, it's not only government. We're talking about academia. We're talking about scholars, culture, chefs, like there's interchange of chefs in the hotels that are still active in the United Arab Emirates, not in Israel. Like Emirati kosher food
Yes.
and vice versa, songs, artists, and again, tourists, young people. A lot of young people coming, traveling. They dreamed for years and years visiting Dubai and Abu Dhabi and seeing all the sights and overhearing about from their colleagues elsewhere. Now they actually can see and feel from themselves.
Great. Mariam, from the point of view of the UAE, how do people in the street feel about all this?
I have to say it was maybe unpredictable how would they feel, but it's going extremely, extremely well. I think people are curious, if I may. They want to know about the other side. They want to know about their culture, their value, their dreams. So we're seeing so much cultural and people-to-people exchange, especially now with the reciprocal visa exemption. It will be much easier to visit the other side. More than 130,000, as you mentioned, Israeli visited UAE already. We saw there's a direct flight between Tel Aviv and Abu Dhabi, Tel Aviv and Dubai. In Dubai last year, there was a huge celebration of Hanukkah, which was marked by the tallest building in the world, Burj Khalifa, by displaying April and yes, and also the Burj Khalifa itself displayed messages in Hebrew. We've seen also Orthodox wedding, Jewish Orthodox wedding happening in the UAE, kosher restaurants being opened. Jewish community have their own rabbi Abadi, I believe. From the cultural perspective, we have friendly matches already been played, ice hockey, football. There's a lot of ongoing things. We have the Field of Peace tournament for junior national baseball team. I mean, national baseball team. It's amazing. So much already has happened that I think there's appetite from both sides to learn about the other and to feel the other feel welcome in their country.
Yep. So here we are in Asia. I mean, how should Asia view the Abraham Accords? What are the opportunities that now present themselves that weren't there before? Tell us a little bit about Israel first, from your perspective. How should Asia see the Abraham Accords, and what are the opportunities?
So I think that Asia, with no difference to other regions, should be very happy for all of us, because it's an unprecedented achievement. It's an opening for something new, and it's an opening for everybody in Asia for a new era in which they don't have to choose anymore, whether it's tourism or business or students. Now, if in the past, right? In the past, you would consider one place and you're stamped in your passport, and then you will be questioned in the other place. Or why? What did you do there? And it's no longer exist. You can go freely. You can do business in both countries or in the entire region. Actually, American company like Chevron that is just entered the energy field in Israel used to work really closely with some of the Gulf countries. It's now all accepted, all free, everything is aligned. The same is for Asia business people. I just heard today we were in the midst of the Asia and Pacific Heads of Mission Conference in Israel online. And I excused myself for this event, which was more important. And I saw our ambassador to India just told us an extraordinary story about a trilateral business opportunity, which is amazing. And I think it could be exactly the same work for Hong Kong and to China, with Israel technology, United Arab Emirates finance and production in China or any other place in Asia that has production capabilities. So it could have large opportunities and large possibilities in all the fields.
Great. And Mariam, from your perspective, what do you feel the opportunities are for Asia now with the Abraham Accords?
Thank you, Robert. Well, I think any step to safeguard regional security would be welcome around the world, and the benefits are obvious. A more stable and prosperous region would bring more trade and investment opportunity to Asia. For example, companies and firms would find the increased ease of movement of goods, services, and human capital conducive to the expansion of their operation in the Middle East in general. And as we mentioned earlier, there's already so much happening between the UAE and Israel. So we hope key players in Asia would come up with creative ideas to engage with the submersion opportunities in the ever-changing landscape in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take advantage of the fact, first of all, we are a few days away from International Women's Day, which is March 8th. But also, as Ronnie pointed out, both countries are represented by women here in Hong Kong. Let's talk a little bit about how you see the future of women leaders in the Middle East. You want to start with that, Mariam? By the way, I've met, is it Reem Al-Hashimi, who was the minister for World Expo 2020, as you said, it's pushed back a year. Very impressive leader and a member of the cabinet, I believe, in UAE. I believe educated at Tufts and at Harvard. Truly a global leader of the future. But talk to us a little bit about women leaders or women leadership in the Middle East.
Thank you, Robert. And allow me to start first wishing everybody happy International Women's Day in advance to all of you. I feel immensely proud and fortunate to be one of the Emirati women that represent our country in different capacities, whether at the diplomatic service or at forefront of COVID-19 response team. I think women leaders in the UAE are definitely helping in changing the future of the country. Since the establishment as a nation in 1971, the UAE has made concerted effort to empower women as a national strategy. One very eminent champion of women issues in the UAE is Her Highness Sheikha Fatima bint Mbarak, chairperson of the General Women's Union, or as we like to call her in the UAE, the mother of the nation. Recently, she was one of the key figures behind the UAE Gender Balance Council, which was established in 2015 to enhance women's role in building the future of the nation. And speaking of gender balance, my own Ministry of Foreign Affairs International Cooperation have female employees stand at 49.5%, with 12.3% at the top leadership level. One example for that is our former Consul General, Nabila Alshamsi, who lots of you, I'm sure, get to meet and work with her, who's currently our ambassador in Montenegro. She's force of nature, Nabila, Ambassador Nabila. Another example you also mentioned, Robert, is our minister, my own Minister of State for International Cooperation, is Her Excellency Reem Al-Hashimi, who's also the Director General of Expo 2020, 2021 now, and one of the key figure behind winning the bid for the UAE. Last month also, we all witnessed, to be exact, on February 9, UAE Hope probe successfully entering the orbit of Mars. 80% of the core science team of the Hope probe are women, led by a young scientist herself, Her Excellency Sarah Al-Amiri, our Minister of State for Advance of Science. If we turn to the private sector, this year we have 23 Emirati women made the Forbes 400 most powerful Arab businesswomen, which is the most of any country in the region in 2020. Also, for all these great strides we made in advancement of women, we ranked 18 globally and first regionally in the UNDP Gender Inequality Index. So much to be proud of. So I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that women are at the cornerstone of our country's development. And we have August 28 dedicated for an Emirati woman, as an Emirati Women Day, to celebrate women's achievement. So every year we celebrate International Women's Day, March 8, and also celebrate Emirati Women's Day in August 28. So two celebrations for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. So I know, Ahuva, that this particular topic is very close to your heart because you did a great event here 2 years ago, which was hosted here at the Asia Society on women, and you brought Israeli women to Hong Kong and a Hong Kong women's panel as well. It was a great session. But talk to us a little bit about how you see the role of women in Israel. We've had an Israeli Prime Minister, Golda Meir. It's been a while.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. But talk to us a little bit about the role of women.
Okay. So, as you mentioned, even in the card it says, "Thank you. This subject is close to my heart." So, but you just mentioned it. But indeed, it was a great success. And Alice Mong, that is among here, was one of the architects of this Hong Kong-Israel woman-to-woman event. In a way, we wanted to repeat it in 2020, but COVID time has came. And I'm happy that at least we're talking now about women leadership and Women's Day. What can I tell you about Israel? So legally, gender equality legislation is one of the most advanced in the world. Education-wise, I can tell you for certain that Israeli women are far more educated than Israeli men. Academically, there's from the graduate academically, and it's even growing in the higher academic levels of master and postdoctorate. It's about 60 to 65% of women. Workplace and politically, I think we still have a few steps to go. And I firmly believe that women should and need to be an integral part of promoting peace in the Middle East and elsewhere, by the way. And I think that if we had a few more women as Golda Meir, we might be in a different situation even sooner. But in the public sector, and also in the business sector in a way, there's a lot of organization, a lot of initiatives to getting to more and more gender equality, combating gender violence, which is, it's a world, it's a world phenomena, very, very sad phenomena that it still exists these days. So even in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you mentioned I'm a woman, and then that time even all my team were females 2 years ago. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our last diplomatic course, we had 17 women and 6 men. So there's a clear, a clear way for gender equality within time. But again, I'm saying it's. Oh, and another news I just read today, by the way, in Hong Kong press, it was a bit surprising. Surprising in the sense that I know of it only from Hong Kong press and not from my own sources. But apparently in an international survey, Israel is just past the United States and Switzerland in women entrepreneurship. And it's now a world leader. So there are a lot of great achievements, but I think we still need to aspire for further developments.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not sure how many young people we have in the audience, but I hope we have some young people on Zoom watching our session today. And so I wanted to ask, as we look at the Abraham Accords, as we look at this new opportunity in the Middle East, what would you say to young people in terms of their aspirations? What does your countries, what does the Abraham Accords offer young people?
Well, I think the Abraham Accords offer a lot of opportunities for all kind of people, but definitely for young people, because this is the future, right? And we are only starting. So young people, you can see from all social media aspects, there's been a huge interest about the Abraham Accords.
Yes.
And even in channels that I'm too old to read already and to watch, you see an overwhelming interest of studying in universities and in both places, vice versa between. But again, we were talking about worldwide young people, if it's incorporation in business, in jobs opportunities, because it's definitely going to create, we are changing the Middle East. It's definitely going to create new opportunities academically, business-wise, touristically wise, and just looking forward to live a little bit longer to see all of this happening.
Okay. And Mariam, from your perspective, what would your message be to young people about the Abraham Accords and what your two countries offer young people today?
I think there's so much excitement and optimism from young Emiratis toward the Accords. I heard my ambassador in Washington, D.C., quoting there were a survey for young Emirati, between the age of 18 to 24, in regards to their view to the Accord, and 89% of them extremely optimistic about the Accords. As they are the one who will harvest the greatest share of reward of the economic, cultural, and scientific collaboration between the two countries as it's unfolding as we speak. We mentioned earlier the Abraham Fund. There's so much, the Abraham Fund, the Abrahamic Family House. So the Abraham Fund, one of the major focuses of the Abraham Fund is youth empowerment, as we have 65% of the Middle East under the age of 30. So it's extremely important. So the opening up of jobs and education opportunity will keenly be weighted in the Middle East. Also, the economic, political, and environmental challenges that are facing the Middle East require a great degree of collaboration and coordination. And in order for us to find a lasting solution, it's vital to engage the stakeholders of the future and to harness their spirit and their energy of innovation. So we have a Minister of Youth in the UAE. That's how much we incorporate youth opinion in the country. So yes, so much happening, as she mentioned already. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I now want to open it to questions either from the floor or from our Zoom audience. We have, I think, a couple of people with microphones who are able to get to you with a mic if you have a question. Any questions from the floor? Yep, we have one question back there.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing your views. It's super enlightening to hear and very, very, I don't know, really fills me with hope for the future, for especially for the younger generation to see this initial initial stages of development in the region. I'm kind of curious to know, in your respective countries, can you sort of highlight some women who we should be watching who are going to make change in the next 5 years?
Good question. Mariam, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, there's so many in the Emirates. We already mentioned two of them already. Well, actually, I mentioned a few of them already. Her Excellency Reem Al Hashimi, our Minister of State for International Cooperation, who's already a rising star. She's young and she achieved so much at such a young age. Minister of Youth, Minister of State for Youth, Shama Al-Mazroui. She is the first Minister of Youth. She's the youngest minister in the UAE. She was a minister at age 21. I think the youngest minister in the world for youth. But in the UAE, it's not just about ministers and ambassadors and all the top levels. We have artists, creative mind, sport. There's encouragement from the government at all levels for young girls to pursue their dreams, especially for young scientists now. The focus in the UAE, young scientists reading and whatnot. So I don't have anybody in top of my mind, but there's so many. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And in Israel, who should we be watching?
It's actually a tough question. There's a lot, but also a few difficulties. So I'm not going to mention anybody from the politics because we are a couple of weeks before election and we cannot mention anybody. Sorry. But there are some, definitely, very distinguished women and promising in the future. I think one of the major guests that we couldn't bring to Hong Kong 2 years ago, and I'm still looking forward to bring her next year if the borders will open, is Dr. Kira Radinsky. I don't know some of you, she's a brilliant scientist, 32 years old from the Technion. Ronnie, you should meet her next, definitely. She's just all over. Her scientific research, artificial intelligence, it's the combination of science and business all together. Another used to be a business woman in public relation, Hannah Rado, but now she's very much dedicated to women empowerment in the peripheric regions of Israel. So she had developed one center close to Dimona. So women actually online, I mean, it started before COVID, but from women from the peripheric regional areas of Israel, both in the north and in the south, with instead of hours traveling to the center, to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, giving secretarial and administration support from their homes or from the center. And it's just remarkable advancement now, even further in COVID time. So this is like the two that came into mind, leaving politics alone. But of course, in the academia, in the business, and in technology, you know, like...
show business.
Show business. Definitely.
Superwoman.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman. Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions from our audience? Yael, do we have something on Zoom?
We do. So we have one guest is asking, how does the Abraham Accord relate to Hong Kong? What is its impacts on Hong Kong business community? So I know we spoke earlier about Asia, but maybe you can specify about Hong Kong.
Anything that you're seeing that has come up because of the Abraham Accords?
Not yet, but I think it's a bit slow again because Hong Kong is a
Can't travel.
exactly used to be this vibrant place, the people traveling all over, and I'm sure that otherwise we would have arranged already investment delegation to both places. So and as I mentioned in my vision, trilateral thing with Hong Kong and United Arab Emirates, who are very close actually in the finance sectors and logistic and aviation hubs, combining Asia and Israel, which is technology, could be a point of contact.
Yeah. I think the Chief Imam had a question, so let's grab a mic over there.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to congratulate both of you for coming close. And I hope this peace, Abraham Peace Accord, will be an invitation for others to join. So my question is, what do you expect the progress of this peace accord in the field of politics, international politics? Some other countries are going to join, as it is the need of the time that the peace is a need for everyone, not only for one country. It is the peace, is the need for everyone. So what do you think? So the other countries, Arab and other Muslim countries, will join the footstep of UAE and Israel. Thank you very much.
Mariam, would you like to start? Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I think all the eyes on us now. So it's really up to us to make this very successful, positive experience. Everybody's watching, and the work just started. There's so much MOU and agreement have signed, but the work really just started to make this a success, and we're determined to make it as a success.
And you have Bahrain, Sudan, Morocco,
correct already.
signed up, right?
Correct, absolutely. Also, UAE support all good faith efforts to broaden regional dialogue. So let's wait and see how it's going to go. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
And Ahuva?
Well, just to add, I think in a way it's a natural progress, but like with Egypt opening the way in 1979, and then Jordan. Now we have 6 Arab countries that joined the circle of peace, and alongside a few other Muslim countries, and of course we are expecting it to be another step. Looking forward that other countries will join this circle of normalization. It's not only peace, it's normalization, definitely in relation to G2G, people, business. So it's on the way, and we still have a way to go. And I think with the time, we will be joined, because more and more people and countries see, maybe in the past they thought that they would pay a price for joining the circle, and it's getting clearer and clearer that actually joining this circle of peace, you can be more in a dialogue and more helpful, enlarging and advancing the peace process in the Middle East.
Thank you. Other questions from our audience? Yes, over there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentations, for explaining 2 countries, which I'm really fond of. To follow up, actually, the questions, it was I'm asking about the same question, basically. But I would like to know, around the region, there's a lot more conservative countries. What is the obstacle? What is the challenge that you're facing? I mean, those are the fundamentals now. I mean, you have opened up 6 other countries, Islamic countries. However, there's a lot more stronger conservative countries within the regions. What is the obstacles that you were foreseeing or facing at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you. Ahuva, that sounds like it's for you.
Yeah. So I actually mentioned, but maybe not clear enough. I think the main obstacle until now was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Definitely the obstacle. In a way, keeping the normalization in the Middle East as a hostage for a long, long time. But I think the realization with time is that if you join the dialogue, you'll be better off than just to stay from outside and say, okay, we don't know. If you don't have relations with one of the sides, you cannot have a constructive role in actually helping out to breach and to do the constructive thing that we're all hoping for in the future, in the near future, will be in a better place.
Thank you. Question back there?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your answer at all. What exactly is your answer for the obstacles, especially in relation to the Palestinians, who you consider as an obstacle? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Can you explain more? Because I don't know how you answered it. I don't get it.
Okay, so for many years, Arab countries would not recognize Israel as a state. Not only, I mean, just will not recognize Israel as the state because of their brotherhood with the Palestinians. We have the Arab League. There's a lot of major actors in the Arab world that were unified, actually, around the Palestinian issue. And they felt for a long time that they cannot forge a peace with Israel, cannot forge a normalization with Israel without, I don't know how to call it. I wouldn't call it like this, but maybe they felt like this, betraying their Palestinian brothers. So that's why I mentioned that it used to be the main obstacle. Is it clearer now? Sorry?
Never mind.
Any other questions? Yes, Consul General of Egypt.
First of all, I'd like to thank Ronnie and Alice for organizing this. I am very happy to be surrounded by so many beautiful women from our part of the world. I
think I'm the lucky one here.
Yeah, this is women, as Ronnie said, would probably do the world a lot better in conflict. We are looking at a different dynamic now, that there is a positive sort of conversation that we're having in the region that would help pre-existing obstacles to be handled in a better light. So if you have a positive way of looking at the future, and I think that's what they saw in the States and the American administration, is that they changed how they approach this endless conflict that we had in the Middle East, which was giving everyone a problem. Now we can look at it in a business opportunity and a futuristic opportunity, which will, I think, have, as a person that grew up trying to also help in resolving this problem, this dynamic, I think, is changing the picture to a positive shadow. And I'm really very, very honored and happy to see you here on the stage. And you give us a lot of hope in the region, and I'm very happy where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
And a big thank you also to the United States for having the determination and capturing the moment to do this, because the role the U.S. played in all this has been absolutely crucial. So thank you. Yeah. Please go ahead.
If I may add, I think we can normalize and we can have a diplomatic relationship with others while still disagreeing on things. We don't agree with everything with Israel, of course, and we will have some tough negotiation and some tough discussion in regard to the Palestinian issue or other thing. Doesn't really matter. So maybe this is the gist of the Abraham Accord, that the normalization doesn't say we agree on everything. It's just it's unlocking potential, and it's creating opportunities and creating hope for the entire region. And maybe that's why the Abraham Fund is also a key component, because it affects the entire region as a whole, and not just Israel and the UAE. Thank you. This is all.
Thank you. No, I think you make a very good point. And you know, if you think about it, the Japanese and the Russians have been arguing for 100 years about the ownership of some islands, right? But that has not stopped them from being able to move on and have good relations and get a lot done together. So I think, you know, in partial answer to the question that you had there, that and I think Mariam and Consul General for Egypt have put it very well, that, you know, looking beyond and trying to focus on what we can get done, with the idea that in the course of time, some of the other issues will have to be addressed and will have to be solved, right? Other questions, either from the floor or on Zoom? Yep, Zoom. Our Zoom audience is quite lively.
So this one comes from Kelvin. Many young people, especially locals, might not really understand much about Israel and the UAE. Is there any plan for the two consul generals to work to promote these two nations?
Yep. We have your work cut
This is
out
what
for
we're
you.
doing.
Well, I've been trying to do that for 3.5 years.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Apparently, I failed.
Yeah. No, but no. On the contrary, I would say that it's an interesting comment, and actually, if I may say, I think maybe the Asia Society has a great role to play here in the education process, in providing the platform for young people to come and hear from you, and when people can travel, to hear from visitors that you both bring in from your respective countries, to make people far more aware of what Israel and the UAE offer the world, and offer Asia specifically.
It's definitely our job,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're keen
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah.
And we would love to do more youth engagement in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So thank the young person who asked the question. We'll definitely put it on our agenda to do more engagement with young Hong Kongers. Thank you.
And if Calvin can leave his details, we will be in touch with him and invite him to
Yeah.
the next event. So
Invite
he
him for
can
some
be-
hummus to the,
Yes,
the
definitely.
consulate. Yeah. Other questions?
The role of Hong Kong. Soon after the deal was signed, I got a phone call from a friend in Jerusalem, and he said, "Ronnie, you know a lot of people in UAE and Saudi Arabia. Can you help introduce me to people?" I'm happy to tell you that friend of mine from Jerusalem is now doing a lot of business in UAE. So that's Hong Kong's role. Last night I was on the phone for almost 2 hours with a friend who's an Indian gentleman, a dear friend of mine who used to live in Singapore and then Hong Kong, and now for the last 10 years in Dubai. He's an investor doing good business there. He said something to me that worries me a little bit. He said that he was with a leading citizen in Dubai, having dinner at a Michelin star restaurant. I wish I were there, but anyway. And next table was full of Israeli people, and they all know that friend of my friend, the leading citizen in town, and they were all asking him, when are you going to help us buy some property in UAE? And the reason I worry is because, property prices in Dubai is already very expensive. I'm afraid
Not as
it's going to go.
expensive as Hong Kong.
No. But my question to the two consul generals is the following: what are you doing to prevent a nasty situation from developing? I don't want to get up one morning and then in the news it says that some Arabs in Israel or some Israelis in Arab are having some problems, security or otherwise, in the other country. All you need, there's crazy people everywhere. All you need is one of them. And so I hope that things are being done to prevent these possible terrible situations from arising, so that all the Arabs in Israel are safe, and all the Israel people in Arab countries such as UAE are safe. So what is being done? Is there anything being done in that regard to make sure that the peace accord will be a long-lasting and long-living one?
Who would like to start?
Sure, I can start. If I understood your question correctly, you're asking, for example, from the UAE perspective, how to keep the peace when we receive Israeli delegation, Israeli youth, and whatnot, right? Is it? Right, right.
Israelis safe.
Oh, well, in the UAE, they're definitely welcome. They do feel safe. We wouldn't have 130,000 Israeli if they didn't feel safe. They had weddings already in UAE, and kosher restaurant, and business opening, and whatnot. They definitely feel safe. As I mentioned earlier, UAE society, even before the Abraham Accord, we had the Abrahamic Family House, which is an interfaith center with synagogue, mosque, and a church in the same site. So it's just this UAE society is so diverse that everybody is welcome, and I don't think the Israeli wouldn't feel safe or welcome at any point. Yeah.
I feel the same. I agree with you. Like, we have plenty security in Israel for ourselves, but definitely our new friends and cousins are welcome in Israel, and I haven't heard of any incidents in both places poses any danger. On the contrary, actually, I've heard so many people, friends and colleagues that have visited both the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco that felt this overwhelming warmth of family. You know, we are cousins. Some of them speak the same language, you know. So I don't feel it now yet. Let's hope it
Asking us
stay
to
like
be
this.
cautious, right?
Indeed. Okay, well, I think in the interest of time, I'm going to ask Gilad to please come up. She's the co-chair of the Jewish Women's Association of Hong Kong to do the thank yous.
Thank you very much. And yes, we're family, and I've never met any family without disagreements. So I feel very confident that we can progress and live together healthy and normal life. Thank you very much. My name is Gilad Alon Shemesh. I'm the co-chair of the Jewish Women Association. Firstly, I want to thank Consul General Ahuva Spieler and Acting Consul General Mariam Alshamsi and Mr. Robert Dorfman for these really inspiring discussions. Thank you to the Asia Society, Mr. Ronnie Chan and Miss Alice Mong, for the beautiful venue and your great support. Thank you, my colleagues in the JWA, especially Ms. Yael Amit, who is the mastermind and champion behind this event, and to Tehila Amos for her dedication, and my co-chair, Goldie Eisenstein. In time like this, where we stand in awe in front of nature's power, the fact that both Israel and the UAE agreed to move forward towards a better tomorrow is a showcase to the strength of human spirit. We are grateful and honored to be able to hold this event in the light of the fight for a healthier and safer environment. I think from all what we've heard, unity is what we need. And the Abraham Accords are a sign that we are able to build together a safer and a better future for humankind. When I was a child, a long, long time ago, the most popular song in Israel was I was born to the peace that will soon arrive. Ani nolati lashalom sherak yagia in Hebrew. I'm very excited and hopeful that my children and our children will be able to actually live in a reality of normality and peace. I wish us all a healthy, peaceful 2021 and the Year of the Ox. Thank you very much for coming and your support.
Thank you very much, Gilad. Much appreciated. So that concludes our formal program for this evening. And again, a big thank you to the Asia Society and the Jewish Women's Association for putting this all together. And Yael, a big thanks to you for managing the whole thing and making it happen so quickly. Yeah, the brain behind it. I believe that our two Consuls General are prepared to stay behind for a little while at least. If you have anything you want to discuss without a large audience, they're going to be here for the next few minutes and you can approach them directly and have a little bit of a chat. So thank you very much to everybody for coming. Again, thanks to Asia Society. I see there are flowers on the way, so let's do that now. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Much appreciated.